All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about conditioning and like a whole bunch of stuff, saying no. And um, I'm actually going to go ahead and read the context for which this this train of thought came from. Um, so there was this post in a group that's definitely not a gentle group about a parent needing to vent and needing maybe support advice. They went to the mall and you know um, the it so says we went to the mall today to eat food at the food court, and my 9-year-old promised he would be good, and we walked past the Build-A-Bear workshop, and of course he wanted one. My husband said no, not today, because they were expensive and the kid has tons of them. The kid got upset and started crying, and then kicked the sign. And so, he was really unhappy. And so then they got the kid home, and, the parents feeling really upset about it. And, because like it was embarrassing, the kid kicked the sign. Um, Also to note, this group is a support group for parents of autistic children. So this is a 9-year-old autistic kid at the mall who became emotionally dysregulated. And so I'm reading the comments, and every single comment blames this parent. Boundaries, mom. Um, it says you stated in your post that he gets things all of the time. Maybe you give him too many things, and maybe you give in too much. Um, more comments. No judgment intended. I think the answer is in your post. You're giving into tantrums and bad behavior, and it goes on and on. All of the comments come in that way, shaming the parent. You're giving into bad behavior. This is all your fault. Um, and I really want to talk about that because A, this isn't true. It's not the parent's fault that the child had a meltdown. It's not because the parent says yes sometimes or a lot of times, or because the parent adjusts sometimes or a lot of times that the child becomes emotionally dysregulated. And it's not that the child is emotionally dysregulated simply because of the word no. And now I want to be really clear. It's like when somebody becomes emotionally dysregulated, we don't have to change a no to a yes. Um, but we can change a no to a yes. And if we were talking through, maybe sometimes we would, and maybe sometimes we wouldn't, right? Because sometimes we could change a no to a yes. And sometimes we really couldn't change a no to a yes, or sometimes we would really weren't, wanting to change that no to a yes. And that's okay. It's not about changing the no to a yes, which a lot of people get stuck there because they're like, oh, this person is completely emotionally dysregulated because you said no. And it's probably because you say yes too often. And when they become emotionally dysregulated, sometimes you change that boundary and you don't remain consistent. Well, I want to back up off of all of these misconceptions and thoughts and all of the blame and judgment a little bit and talk about the reasons. First of all, we have an emotionally dysregulated 9-year-old. Just take all of the other things away from it. We have an emotionally dysregulated, autistic 9-year-old at a shopping mall. Okay. So, a shopping mall for an autistic person is a painful place. It's loud. Oh, the echo in your head, and it's so bright. And there's people everywhere coming and going. And there's a ton of overstimulation, and there's a ton of pressure to buy, buy, buy. A dysregulated autistic person at the shopping mall, to me, comes as no surprise. Take everything else out of it. Take the no's and the yeses and all of that other like buy and all of that stuff out of it. An emotionally dysregulated autistic person at the shopping mall of any age comes as no surprise to me. That's a really painful place to be. I, as a 49-year-old adult, like, I get anxiety at the thought of even going there. And if I'm going to go there, because sometimes we got to go there, right? I'm going to take all the tools I have available to me, whether I don't really like a lot of things like headphones and sunglasses, but those things work for some people. Hats, things that lower the lights, things that maybe, make the sounds a little bit lower. And if I go to the shopping mall, I'm getting in and I'm getting out. I'm not hanging out at the food court and having a bunch of food and sitting around in the loud noise. By the time I'm done eating, I'm going to be a mess. Even if I want some of that food, I'm going to grab it on my way out the door and eat it in the car, because that is not a place where I'm going to feel comfortable. And now I'm not going to say that's a blanket for all autistic people, but a lot of autistic people are going to have a similar kind of experience of sensory overwhelm, of things being too much, and getting to a place where they could possibly become dysregulated. So we take all of the tools. What are the things that help them to feel safer and more comfortable in these situations? Um, what are the things that can help them to be okay while they're at the shopping mall? Now I want to talk about, like, a lot of this will, when I'm reading this post, a lot of this will, if you said no more, if you didn't adjust your boundaries sometimes, all of the consistency stuff, right? Well, I really feel that some kind of like consistency in our lives is really important. And actually, neurodiverse folk, they actually they don't like to be told what to do a whole lot and like pigeonholed and cornered, but they do thrive on a certain amount of normalcy and routine and consistency. Um, and in fact, for a lot of us, it's going outside of our norms that are difficult, like, the consistency of being home and getting up around the same time of every day. That's a lot more comfortable for us than the inconsistency of a sideways out of nowhere trip to the shopping mall. Right. And so I think that all of these ideas, they're all getting conflated together, where we're not really seeing human beings and what human beings might need in the moment. So if somebody becomes emotionally dysregulated, no matter where they're at, um, you know, having firmer boundaries with an emotionally dysregulated person, in my opinion, is actually borderline abusive. If somebody is emotionally dysregulated and we're just like doubling down on our boundaries, well, I said no, and that's what this is all about. And your emotions don't matter right now. And this is all about the no. And now you're still crying. So I'm angry because you're not respecting my boundary around the no, right? And in reality, it's not even really about the no. The no triggered the cry, the no triggered the emotional meltdown. Yes, but it's about the emotional meltdown. And if we can be there for somebody in that moment, hey, I really understand the pain. I really get why you're upset. You know, um, Maybe next time or maybe in the future or whatever it is, I'd really love to get you a Build-A-Bear. Can we plan for Build-A-Bear for your birthday? Things like that. Like, or not even like, we don't even have to dismiss it as something for the future. We can just be there in the moment with them and just be like, hey, I understand the feelings. And no, not being able to do the things we want, that's really hard. And not being able to get the things that we want to get, that's all really hard. And um, when we work through emotions in that way. And particularly when we stay calm ourselves, because we are teaching emotional regulation and how we respond. If we get mad and we're edgy and snappy, if we're screaming, if we're getting aggressive, if we're overriding autonomy, if we're doing all of these things, and not to say that sometimes, like in the shopping mall during a meltdown, we might not have to override somebody's autonomy. If they're like laying in the middle of the floor, flopping their head and like getting hurt, we might have to pick them up and move them outside to the car where they're safer, right? But not that as like our main line of defense, right? And if we were to have to override somebody's autonomy in a situation like that, the energy we brought to it would be really important. Like, are we doing this with a whole bunch of anger? Let's get you out of here. Or are we doing it with like a whole bunch of loving care? Hey, you're really having a hard time. I'm going to move you to somewhere where you're safe, you know? Um, and all of that stuff, it's like, that's how we're teaching our children. That's how we're showing up. When we're doing all of the emotionally dysregulated things, trying to get them to regulate, we're just showing them that when we get upset, we act dysregulated. And when we work through this stuff, when we talk about it, when we give healthier places for it to come out, then we're helping our children to learn these tools so that when they become full grown adults, they'll have the tools to navigate understanding, like, the different ways that they can process through hearing the word no. Sometimes no can be really upsetting. Sometimes no is absolutely a blessing. Like, no, you don't have to go to the shopping mall. Yay! um, and I feel the biggest thing about all of, well, there were a couple of things here in this conversation that really stood out to me. One is that we don't honor humans as individuals. We're always, when it comes to parenting, always talking about humans like they're, a one size fits all, like they're all just one big mishmashed group of people. And like, we're not individualistic and we don't have individual ways that we need to be treated, that we'd like to be helped, the different ways that we're navigating the world, the different experiences that we're having. Um, and that's one really big one. It's like, as parents, I really hope that we're able to look in at our children as the beautiful, amazing, wonderful, individualistic beings that they are. Um, and then another thing is like the judgment, the judgment, bag the judgment, you know, um, children's behavior isn't necessarily a reflection on parenting. Sure, there's, parents who are aggressive with their children, and because of that, their children are also aggressive. That is true. Um, so it's not necessarily a reflection on parents, the way that a child behaves. What is a reflection on parents is the way that the parent is responding to the child's behavior. Um, that's one for me. And then, you know, um, people are human beings. We all need to be treated on that individualistic level and seen as individual human beings. And then, another thing that I think is really big is like the conflation when we talk about how people need consistency to learn. Um, some of us need consistency for a lot of reasons. Maybe it's to learn, maybe it's for safety and security. Maybe consistency really helps us in a lot of ways. I know for me that it does. Um, but not forced consistency or stringency or the inability to adjust your sails or, um, be able to be a little bit flexible in some situations, because all of that really matters too, right? And because that comes down to the individualistic, that comes down to seeing the human beings, which matters so much. We're not and that's the individualism again when it comes down to really addressing people. um and also, it's like we can't really condition somebody to never be upset when they hear the word no. We can say no, but we can't dictate how somebody feels about our no. And with our children, when our children are struggling because we said no, we don't have to change that no to a yes. However, we can be there for them in loving, supportive ways that helps that child to still feel safe and loved and validated and understood and all of that in that moment, which helps them to have a healthier way to navigate through the big feelings that came up around the word, right? And so, um, I guess, yeah, with human beings, like I really just want to lean into that flexibility and seeing people on that really human level, as opposed to numbers and a big old mishmash conglomerate of, everybody one size fits all, and we're gonna, meet our people right where they're at by doing things off of some kind of like a script. Because humans, I know we might get something from a script. I really enjoy plays. But it's not the deepest way to interact with human beings. So, um, I probably had a lot more thoughts about that I wanted to share, but also probably talked quite a bit here. Um, so I guess I'll leave it at that, and we'll get to the sharing portion of the call. If any of you is wanting to go first, you can let me know. However feels most comfortable. Let me shut off the recording.